Hey guys, ballparkkenan here, and today we're going to be doing a speed build video. Now right here I spawned in one of my other ships to get a sense of scale, so I don't make my new ship too big or too small. I want it to be just about the same size as the ship I just spawned in. Now I have gotten some questions on how I build the shape of my hulls, and it's really just a slope block, a beam, slope block, beam, and you just repeat that until you get the length you want. And then you can also switch it up and have smaller beams or smaller slopes. For this ship I thought, what if we put the turrets on the front of the ship, man? Because yeah, that's an original idea and it's never been done before. Definitely. But no, in reality I actually just needed another ship to support my other battleship, so I have two battleships now that are pretty affordable. And right here I'm just measuring out the 3 turret placements. Obviously these are temporary and they're going to change, but it's good to have at least a rough idea of where I was going to place my turrets. For the armor on this ship, it's just one layer of metal armor on the outside. The top and bottom are made of wood. And then for any essential components, I'm going to be putting a layer of armor on them as well. So for the AI, I'm going to be putting a layer of heavy armor around it. For the engines, there's going to be one layer of metal armor along with the lamp system. And then for the turrets, it's going to be one layer of metal armor as well. And I armor like this just mainly to keep costs down. I could armor up the entire hull, but generally it's empty space or components that just can be lost and the ship still functions fine. Now I did end up expanding it a little bit, making it a little bit wider, just to accommodate the turrets. I wanted a little bit larger turrets. I also made the rear of the ship a little bit longer just to accommodate the lamp system and the amount of engines I'll need. Since the engines are going to be powering the shields I'm going to put on this and the lamp system, I'm going to need a decent amount of engine power. So the engine room is going to have to be a pretty decent size. Pretty much, I'd say a little under a third of the entire ship is the engine room. And right here I am building the AI housing, basically a outer layer of heavy armor and then an inner layer of spall protection and EMP protection, which is just the wood. Now right here I'm just guessing at how many processor cores I'll need, but in the end I came up pretty close, but it has enough room to expand. Now right here I'm placing the lamp system from the Poseidon into this ship. I just copy and pasted it over. Then I started working on the engine housing, which is just a single layer of metal around my engines. And then for the engines themselves, I ended up using Gwabby's useful engine platform, one of those engines on there. And I'll leave a link to that platform in the description. Then right here, I'm connecting up the lamp system. And then for the munition defense systems, I set it to left it 90-degree field of view and then turned it down to 100 meters for the engagement distance, or the range at which it'll start firing at incoming projectiles. The further away a incoming projectile is from the munition defense system itself, the less accurate it'll be. So reducing that basically reduces the amount of energy wasted on missed shots and makes your lamp system more accurate. And actually linking this laser system up was a little bit complicated. I did want to just do it straight, connected up to connectors and then to transceivers, but I didn't want to risk, one of those blocks getting cut off and then the entire system. So I tried to put in a little bit of redundancy to try to keep them separate. So if one side goes out, the other doesn't go out. Or if a middle piece falls off, things like that. Then I just started building the turret. I didn't really have what the turret was going to look like in mind. I didn't plan that out at all, but I did want it to be at least 456 millimeters. Now for the fire rate on these turrets, I didn't really want it to go anything too crazy, so I just put it in the 100 rounds a minute range. So I didn't need any clips, I just placed the autoloaders. which are plenty fast enough to keep up with that, especially with the number I have here. I could probably even turn up to like 150 or so, but I'll just leave it at 100. Now, I didn't really have any design in mind when I started building the outside of the turret, so I just kind of winged it. And at first I was like, oh, let's try to do a little bit more boxy design, and then I ended up scrapping that and added in some angles, because the angles always look good. But it did kind of keep a boxy shape, some nice flat, the flat front and then kind of the flat top. And it's actually one of my most unique looking turrets. All my other ones look relatively the same, but I think this one turned out pretty nice. Another thing is, when you're building your turret, I mean, obviously sometimes I do have a shape in mind, but honestly, just like start throwing stuff together and see what looks good. And if you don't like it, you can just redo it. Don't limit yourself to kind of creating and editing at the same time, because it doesn't, you just imagine it's your rough draft and you can't edit your rough draft while you're writing your rough draft. So, I mean, I guess you could consider it kind of a time waster, but that's what I usually do, is I just start building it, look at it, say cool or no, and then, start deleting pieces, just moving stuff around, just playing with it. And now here, what I did was I copied my turret, the one I built, moved it back some into the second turret position, and then cut off the top of the turret and just rose it up, and then copied the top of the original turret and slapped it onto the new higher up turret. And it's a really easy way to move your turrets back and raise them up. And for this, building the upper part of the second turret, or the base of the second turret really, I didn't really have any shape in mind. I kind of just went with, starting a box and then shaping it to something that looks, halfway decent. Which actually it fit in really well with the front of the turret there. Now right here I had to push back the ammo compartment I made to make room for the furthest back turret. Now I did the same thing I did for the other turret, which is just copy the base, paste it over, cut off the top of the turret, and then make it higher, and then paste the top of the turret back on. You'll notice right here that the second turret is actually getting stuck. So right here I'm just looking for where it's actually getting stuck at. And it ended up just being these wood blocks. So then what I did was copy the kind of base of the other turret and just moved it up and back, and then pasted it onto the last turret. And then this is where I'm going to build the bridge itself. I was going to make a even up, like higher up deck, like a 4th level, I guess. But then I just decided it would look way better if I just integrated it into the turret itself, or under the turret itself. Which actually works out, because usually you'd be worried about like an explosive, or, it's pretty vulnerable if you have a bunch of shells inside your bridge. at least from like a, crew standpoint. But since it's just the cooling units going up and there's actually no, shells being stored in the bridge, it actually worked out pretty well. And then for the mast, I had really honestly no clue what I wanted to do, and even winging it was like a little rough. I still don't like how it looks, and I was gonna go for more of like a angled back a little bit, which you can kind of see with some of the shape. How it kind of leans backwards, towards the back of the ship. But in the end, it worked out, and I just left it as it was. It's pretty ugly, to be honest, though, but oh well. And then I started placing ammo. Since I destroyed most of it moving the turret, I started placing this under the water, and that also helps balance out the weight, since this ship is pretty top heavy with having the turrets really high up. And then right here I started placing the bridge so you can see out of it the glass. And then for your stairs, make sure the kind of darker part is on the top of the step. And then, again, right here, started adding ammo and making a nice ammo box under the ship to try to weigh it down. And then I added some angles here or some slopes to help reduce drag. And then I added the munition detection system, or munition warners rather. And then we test it out, see how it's doing. Now this LAM system early on did fairly well. I had 4 ships, fired at least 100 something missiles at it, and I think it took out all but 4 or 5 missiles. Then I placed a PID system to help balance the recoil from the guns so the ship doesn't tip over. And then in the end I ended up placing an electric motor with some batteries to help any excess power draw that happens with the LAM system. And then I placed a bunch of shields and angled them away from the ship. And that is this ship pretty much done. I still need to add a passive sonar under the ship to detect incoming torpedoes so the LAM system can engage those. In the end, it ended up being about 5 hours over a few days. And then that's obviously not counting any little minor tweaking, but that's just straight build time, which actually isn't too bad. But obviously this is going to be a project that's forever. I'm going to be constantly adding things, changing things, finding weaknesses, and switching it up there. So the ship is never really done. I'll be putting this ship up on the workshop if you want to check it out for yourself. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.